Is it really the nostalgia, or were things actually better back then? I know as a almost 29-year-old man, when I think back to the good old days when I was 11 to 14 years old, I think about just how good we had it. Games like Black Ops 1, Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 2 were coming out. Movies like Iron Man and the first Avengers were releasing. Fast food restaurants still had dollar menus. You could buy a McDouble for $1. You could buy a double cheeseburger for $1.50. A booster pack of your favorite trading card was only $5 instead of $8. Smartphones were more like glorified iPods and not personal pocket computers. We weren't all addicted to the screens. We weren't all addicted to scrolling. We had conversations with each other. We took the time to look each other in the eyes and talk about life, talk about things that were important. And even if they weren't important, we had the dignity and we had the respect to focus on each other whenever we're having these conversations. Not everyone was at each other's throats. Cancel culture was not the norm, and we could actually agree to disagree. Games were good. Movies were good. There were a lot of things to look forward to and not just look back on. We were eager to make new memories instead of reminisce on the old ones. I felt like you could go to the grocery store and smile at a stranger and they'd actually smile back instead of grimace or just look the other way. The internet was a new, exciting place that was fun. It was interesting to explore, to find a new website that you could waste your time on. It wasn't just filled with promotions and greed and hate. Video game developers actually seemed to want to make a good game that players actually wanted to play and not just fill their single-player open-world game with microtransactions for cosmetics and pay-to-win systems. I felt like not everything was something. You didn't always have to take a stance to save face. You didn't always have to choose a side. You could just live life, have fun, make friends, be a part of a community. So maybe the feeling of nostalgia isn't just us looking back at those times with rose-tinted glasses, but maybe things actually were better. Or were they? Will kids nowadays look back at Fortnite in the same way that I look back at Modern Warfare 2? Will kids think about Skibbity Toilet in the same way that I think about the Numa Numa guy? Will people look back at The Last of Us 2 in the same way that I look back at Halo Reach? Not thinking about the division that it caused, but thinking about how great of a game it was. Will Phase 6 of the MCU hit as hard for the kids nowadays as Phase 2 did for me? Will brick-and-mortar stores still exist, or will Amazon take over entirely? It's always difficult, as a human, to accept the end of something. Whenever something feels right, whenever something feels good, we all just want it to continue forever. And sometimes it actually feels like it will never end. But once we do reach the end, it feels like we've lost everything. So were things actually better 10 to 15 years ago? I don't know. It's difficult to look back in all fairness and completely objective without any bias and say for sure that things were better at that time. Because I was living in those moments. Those were the golden ages for me. Those were the best times of my life. So looking back without bias is near impossible. I often think about how the children of today will perceive the things that I loved in my golden age, like I do with something like James Bond. I didn't grow up with James Bond. I didn't watch any of the movies as a young lad. I had no nostalgic ties to them. But in the year 2022, I went back to the beginning, started with Dr. No, and watched every single movie, all the way from Dr. No to No Time to Die. 25 movies watched with no nostalgic ties, no pre-existing bias, and every single one of them enjoyed thoroughly. So I know that quality transcends time. But will the kids of today look back at the things that I loved so dearly 10 to 15 years ago in the same way that I look back at something like Goldfinger? Again, it's really hard for me to say, but I know that in the moment whenever I experienced those things, that they were truly special. And just based off the minimal research I've done on things like Reddit, it seems like the people who experienced those games from my golden age now seem to have very similar feelings, that maybe those games have the same quality that transcended time in the same way that Goldfinger did for me. I see my 5-year-old experiencing Pokemon with the same level of enthusiasm and excitement as I did 20 years ago. I've seen my wife experience Pirates of the Caribbean and have the same enjoyment that I did whenever I first watched it 22 years ago. So maybe those rose-tinted glasses of ours aren't so rose-tinted, but are just layered with colors of truth. So maybe things really were better back then. It's always hard to gauge because as time continues to go on, my bias grows greater and greater with every second that passes. Those same feelings of nostalgia that I had 5 years ago just continue to grow stronger and stronger. But I know what I've seen, and I know what I've experienced. And whenever I've seen and encountered unbiased experience, it's hard to deny the truth that maybe it wasn't just a nostalgia after all. Maybe things actually were better back then. But even if that is true, I think it's important to remember that we can't go back in time. So why waste time obsessing about the past and thinking about how good we had it when there's still time to make good quality memories in the future and in your present? Don't let time slip you by obsessing about those good old days, but instead, try to experience the present with the same level of excitement and enthusiasm that you had back then. In an online culture that's so habitually negative about every little thing, it's important to remind yourself that not everything sucks. Not everything's horrible. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to enjoy new things. Yeah, maybe it is true that things actually were better back then, but don't let that Baldur's Gate 3 or Alien Romulus pass you by and not allow yourself to enjoy it because it came from the now instead of coming from the past. You're never too old to make a core memory. Experience new things for the first time and really try to enjoy it. And if that doesn't work, then maybe experience something old for the first time. Go watch your own Goldfinger, or play that game you never got around to playing that came out 15 years ago. One thing I've learned in my very short 28 years on this planet is it takes more effort to be upset than it does to be happy. So just let loose and enjoy yourself. Enjoy the things around you. Enjoy the people around you. Sure, maybe it is true that things actually were better back then, but that doesn't mean that things can't be good now too.
Tango atingido. Lançando uma granada de luz.